Growing up, I was kind of the rebel between my brother and I.
I'm shocked.
So,
Okay, welcome back to the Thread the Needle podcast. I'm Matt,
I'm Jacqueline.
and we're here with another new episode. And the last one, we had the Oak Cliff Women's Council. It was great. We had a lot of fun with them. They were awesome guests, and hopefully we'll be able to bring them back for some really good conversations. So we wanted to continue the momentum and push that theme of Women's History Month and continue celebrating that. So I thought it would be cool to hear from our very own Jacqueline.
Yes, it's going to be all about me today.
It is. We want to hear your story, want to hear your background, and kind of how you got to where you are today. So without any delay, let's just jump right in and tell me about yourself. Tell me about your parents, kind of the early days, and what formed the young Jacqueline.
Yeah, so my parents, my mom and my grandparents immigrated to the U.S. in the 90s. I was born in 1990, so she moved here right before I was born, which God knows how that happened or how that was legal, but I don't ask questions. I'm still here. And I grew up in Chicago for the first couple years and moved to Florida, did all my schooling there, went to college. And then right after college, I moved to Dallas and met you.
Awesome. So tell me about growing up in that community a little bit, because from what I know, very traditional values, can be a little rigid, value on stability and playing it safe and just trying to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Very much not stepping out and taking a huge risk and doing something crazy like starting your own business.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what was it like growing up kind of with the social expectations or pressures that you faced?
Yeah, I think growing up, there was a lot of pressure, but I had kind of my mom and my grandpa feeding in to, what my path was going to look like. In traditional Indian homes, the path is already laid out for you. So while they say, live the American dream, you still kind of have to follow the path that your parents have set for you, or you have to go into a certain degree and occupation just so you're content. And whether it's in the medical field or being an engineer or whatever, it's still a high paying job, but you're still pretty much content and you're going to live a good life.
It's like safe.
Yeah, it's safe.
Yeah.
It's, you're not going to really go through trouble, after you set yourself to a great career. Now, for me, I always challenged my parents growing up. I was kind of the rebel between my brother and I.
I'm shocked.
So we're all shocked, guys. I was always curious. I just wanted to know why things were done a certain way, even culturally. Like, there's so many beautiful things about our culture, but then there's not so great things about our culture, which I didn't necessarily agree with growing up. So I kind of figured that out at a young age, and I would ask a lot of questions. So, that's not great in our culture when you're trying to be a little bit more curious than others. But I think that led me to where I am in the entrepreneurial journey, because I was always trying to do something outside of the box. And I kind of learned that in a way from my parents, because while we were in the Indian culture, we weren't really the traditional home. And what my grandfather instilled in me, he was a risk taker, he was entrepreneurial. So he never made me do things that I didn't necessarily want to do. Rather, he encouraged me to do things that challenged me versus playing it safe.
Mm-hmm. So he kind of pushed you to be creative, think outside the box. And it sounds like that's what you're saying was kind of the negative aspect of that. I guess the social expectation is just that you're supposed to be stable, you're supposed to play it safe, not really take risks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you didn't agree with very strongly.
Yeah, Indian culture everyone loves stability. Everyone loves playing it safe, and you could kind of figure out what the next move is going to be. No one wants to do something where we don't know where the road is going to lead or where the journey is going to end up.
Yeah, unpredictability. And yeah, as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to embrace that because it's kind of part of the package.
For sure.
And I mean, from what you're saying, your mom took a pretty big risk too, leaving her home as a single mother with one kid and another one on the way.
She did. She might not realize it, but she played a pivotal role in where I am today. She took the biggest risk of all and had to build from the ground up, and she did it by herself, raising 2 kids. And I think I get some of that risk taking from her. So
yeah, so they kind of blazed the trail for you a little bit, whether they did it intentionally or not. So tell me a little more about, kind of like later teenage years. You're looking at, college, and even in college, starting to look at career options. How do you balance social pressure versus what you really desire? Like something that you actually want to pursue?
Yeah, I mean, teenage years going into college, I think that was a little rough because, my mom and the community, everybody was doing the same thing. And I felt like women at the time where I was at, everyone was going into the medical field. So the pressure was you have to get certain grades and certain classes and subjects. So you're in these classes in college, and that's the path that you were going to take. So the pressure was you had to get straight A's. And if you weren't a straight A student, then you were looked down upon. So everything was just achievement and status and
comparison.
Success. Yeah, in comparison. Yeah. And while I love how tight-knit, family-oriented our culture is, everyone was in everyone's business. And so if you weren't going a certain path, you were also looked down upon. And to be honest, school just wasn't my thing, at least the subjects that I was in and the degree that I chose to do in college. Now, if I had done something in fashion or design or put in a creative space, I feel like the outcome would have looked a little bit different. But because I was kind of closed in and not able to, I don't know, be creative, I guess you can say, that put a little bit of resentment in me because I felt like I'm doing something that I don't want to do. But fast forward after college, I think my grandpa started feeling like, okay, she has good things set out for her. And he was the only one I felt like at the time that really understood me to do something outside of the box and take a risk, because that's what he did. And so I think he empathized with me a little bit because he saw himself in me, and he just, went on with things without people's approval and just either made it happen or he learned along the way.
Yeah. So who are some people, I guess some women that you have like looked up to, or someone who's been an inspiration to you that kind of made this idea possible for you? Because I mean, growing up in a situation like that where there's an expectation of this is what you're supposed to do, especially being a woman, and that's kind of the path laid out for you. I mean, did you see an example somewhere that let you know that there were other options?
At first, probably not within my community, but being interested in fashion and modeling and just the entertainment industry, I think one person would be Mindy Kaling when I was growing up. Office, if you haven't seen The Office, I don't know what you're doing with your life, but seeing a brown skinned woman that made she made a huge success in where she was, and she paved the way in so many other industries. And I think once women like me saw that, I think the possibilities just started happening, and you start thinking, okay, I am not in the right spaces. So, how can I get to those spaces and those communities? So, then you have to start thinking outside the box
Hmm.
and putting yourself out there, even though it's scary, but you kind of have to do it.
Yeah, but that representation is a big deal because before you saw her example,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, like you may not have even known to ask those questions or
Right.
known that it was a possibility that you could ask those questions or end up in the right circles of people or the right rooms to provide those opportunities.
Right. And it's not like she was my friend or anything like that. I just saw her on a TV show and I
Hmm.
thought, how did she get there?
Yeah,
Or how did she get those chances while I'm sitting over here in a very safe space and no one's really doing anything that's challenging themselves or taking a risk or making a decision that, oh, this might be scary, but I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
yeah. Is there anyone else that kind of steered you towards fashion?
I think when we started in 2017, the other person that I was really following along their journey was Deepika
Hmm.
and her beauty brand. And that skyrocketed. And where she is right now versus where she was 7 years ago, I mean, it's just a world of a difference because she's in spaces that are with so many other beauty brands, celebrities, fashion designers. And I'm not saying you have to be in those specific places, but she worked her way up and she put herself out there in
Yeah.
ways that people probably are like, oh, that's so embarrassing. I don't know why she would do that. But sometimes you have to be delusional to get to where you are.
Yeah, I mean, she believed in herself, and now she's being taken seriously, and her brand is being taken seriously in, rooms and stores with
Yeah,
any major brand that you can think of.
for
And
sure.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, that is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning of this journey for you, I'm sure your family had some questions, some hesitations, but now that you're a few years in and you've learned a lot, you've grown a lot, and you've accomplished a lot of cool things, and you're continuing to, push forward and grow. How does your family feel about this now, about your entrepreneurial journey?
I think my whole family's genuinely happy for me, but I can honestly say I'm sure it's 50-50. Some people are probably like, why is she still doing this? Why
Mm,
did she take this career path? It's so not stable. And then there's the other half that loves it and loves the thrill of it and seeing all the opportunities
yeah,
that I've gotten. And, while it's not easy, you have to sacrifice a lot, which not everyone is willing to do. I think that is genuinely like exciting for them. They're proud of me. They love that I'm doing something completely out of the norm.
mm-hmm,
So to them, it's different. And maybe, everyone in my family or some other people in the Indian culture might not do it, but it still gives people a push. And also, you can do it. It's
yeah,
not totally out of left field where you don't have the right people, community, accessibility. Like you can make things happen if you want to because we have all the resources now versus 10, 20 years ago.
yeah, for sure. What's so different that's probably hard for some people to grasp or understand is the fact that you've prioritized creativity over stability.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my life does not look like the traditional Indian woman, and I've embraced that. And I think, that could be a fail in some people's eyes or a success in some people's eyes.
Hmm.
And I think you can really talk about this. This will probably be part two in the next episode of our culture is very approval based. So you either people please your way through your journey or you figure it out yourself. And so for me, while it's taken me a long time to figure some things out within my journey, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm late because that's just part of it. And I'm doing something that not everyone's doing. So we
Hmm.
can't really compare the journeys just because I didn't choose the traditional path.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people before you have blazed a trail to give you even the idea that something like this is possible.
Right.
And now you are blazing a trail, kind of going to different spaces, setting an example. And so that kind of leads me to really one final big question I have for you
For part one.
for part one.
Yeah.
If there are, young underrepresented women that are listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube, if you could share one thing to encourage or inspire them, what would that be?
Don't live for the approval of others. Start somewhere. Just start and believe in yourself, because I think believing in yourself outweighs everything else. And don't worry about the noise, because that's always going to be there. At the end of the day, just keep doing you, keep pushing, keep working hard, and making moves for yourself.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Yeah, that's awesome. There's so much to unpack. I know this is only going to be part one of probably many parts of digging into just all the different nuances of your story, with the cultural implications and the social implications, and just all the things you've done, and then all of the cool facets of your family in particular, and just kind of what has made you who you are. So I'm excited to dig into it some more. I'm sure it will be a series of several episodes that will kind of spread out over time.
For sure.
Yeah, I thought this was a good one to scratch the surface and kind of continue celebrating the accomplishments and opportunities of women everywhere as we approach the halfway mark of Women's History Month.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thanks for sharing with the people, and thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Thanks for liking and reviewing the podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's super helpful for us and helps us reach new people. So, and thank you guys for the encouragement, for the notes, the comments, the DMs. Thanks for hitting us up and letting us know that you're watching, and we really appreciate that.
Yes.
And yeah, we will talk to you next time.
See ya.